Right, so we missed out on covering this when it first appeared, but it is certainly noteworthy. Assassin's Creed Shadows is getting a port to Nintendo Switch 2. There has been a trailer released, amusingly released at 720p resolution on the official Nintendo channel. However, Ubisoft does have a 1080p version, so we're taking a look at that. It's an ambitious enterprise. What do you think about it, Oliver? I guess to cut to the chase, Tagon86, the supporter, asks, do you see any signs of RT in the released media for Assassin's Creed Shadows on Switch 2?
No, I do not. In
fair
AC Shadows, the main areas where the non-RT lighting really falls apart, in my opinion, are in naturalistic areas between towns and settlements where the probe density is probably pretty low. And the lighting has a bit of a flatter quality to it with like less pleasing gradients between light and dark. Foliage doesn't have a very grounded appearance, and the sky color tends to predominate in shadowed regions. You get that kind of bluish cast very often. And a few of the shots in the snow and in forested areas in this trailer give me a bit of that impression of the baked lighting in this game. Now, I would want to see more detailed comparisons or ideally be able to do some comparisons on my own with the actual product here to say that conclusively, but at least my impression so far from the released media has been that it's probably that baked GI and not the RTGI that we saw on the PS5 and Series X in their 40 FPS and 30 FPS modes, and PS5 Pro in its 60 FPS modes in all of its modes. On Series S, notably Series S, even though it only ran at 30 FPS, it did not have RTGI in any mode, so perhaps similar limitations would come into play with the Switch 2 here, especially considering that, you do have that portable mode with its massively cut back clock rate. That probably is not too suitable, I would imagine, for such a mode. But one thing I did want to highlight here is that Ubisoft is being super tricky with their assets again as well. Like you mentioned, they had that 720p asset, but even the 1080p asset, and just at 30 FPS, it doesn't really speak to a whole lot of confidence in this game. And I feel a little bit more confident in mentioning it this time around, because we saw them pull like the exact same routine with their assets for Star Wars Outlaws, right? Which did end up shipping in a very good state. I have no doubts that this game will ship in a good state as well, but it does seem like, they're just keen to publish lower quality media. With Star Wars Outlaws, they were only publishing like stream rips, or other people were publishing stream rips from the Ubisoft Connect event.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if you're going to show content on YouTube from Switch 2, just upload it at 4K 60, so we can get a better impression of all the details. That's certainly been the practice from multiple publishers so far. That's been the way that people have gone. I think it's the most honest way to show off your game, and probably the way that makes your game look the most flattering here, because I don't think even a game that's low resolution looks very good when it's slathered with compression artifacts. So that's my own personal suggestion here in terms of how to present these titles in the most flattering way.
Yeah, just to sort of put that into context, I mean, first of all, the higher the resolution asset you give to YouTube, basically the better it looks, because higher bit rates, higher resolution, get higher bit rate. It just generally translates into a better image on the target device. The concept of running what is probably a 30 FPS game in a 60 FPS container on YouTube may not make sense, but it actually preserves the entire output of the source console. And basically, if there are performance drops, they look much worse on a 30 FPS YouTube video than a 60 FPS YouTube video. So in terms of sort of best practices for assets on YouTube, it doesn't really matter what your source resolution is or what the source frame rate is. What matters is capturing the entire output of the console and putting it on YouTube at the highest possible resolution, because it just kind of presents better, so to speak. John, any thoughts specifically on Assassin's Creed Shadows? I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. I just think even if it doesn't have the ray trace GI, it's a worthy endeavor.
I would say Star Wars Outlaws sort of set my expectations pretty high here, because, I mean, different team, of course, that's massive, and Snowdrop, but that was such an incredible port. It really brought forward the feeling of Star Wars Outlaws, and they've continued to improve it since. And then, like you said, Oliver, the initial media for it was terrible.
Yeah.
And the end result was great. So it's really tough to judge this. So everything we can say from this is just based on just this media and our hope that the final game will see improvements. But the main things I'm seeing here, I do think it looks very good at a glance. I think they're heading in the right direction. As you noted, the lack of ray tracing is certainly clear, especially anything that shows more interior spaces as well. Like you mentioned the outdoors with the open lighting, but like darker regions, like there's some media around of her like in like a darkened corridor at night, like sort of in stealth mode. And the RTGI of the original allowed all like those darker areas to be filled with this natural shadow, and in the Switch 2 version, that's just all gone. Everything's very glowy. The specular sheen is visible across the whole world. It just doesn't look quite right. But again, they had to make cuts. They managed to get RTGI in Star Wars Outlaws, but perhaps they're making different choices here. And then I would still say the results are certainly attractive, and I'm excited to see what they do with it, because I do think this was a really excellent game, and one of the best things they've done in a while in this series after some, dare I say, not very good games. I was famously not a fan of Assassin's Creed Valhalla at all. I think this is much better. I also noted visually, it seems like they finally added per object motion blur to this game on the other systems and PC, and then now they've stripped it away, it looks like, or at least based on the assets here, it feels like it's not there, which is a bummer. And then things like shadow quality, the fog quality, things like that all seems to be cut back a little bit. But again, all of this is just preliminary, just looking at what is presumably a very poor quality asset, as we saw before. So I think we're just excited to see what they do with it. And I think Ubisoft's track record so far on Switch 2 is shaping up to be quite good, because these are not simple games to run.
No.
These are high-end current generation console games that they're doing a really great job bringing over to the Switch 2. And I think that definitely deserves to be commended. I do remember there were some rumors about Assassin's Creed Mirage as well showing up, but I gather that with this appearing so soon, that's probably off the table. And Mirage actually would have made sense, I think, given that it even had like an iPhone port and things like that, right? So like that should have been an easy one to do, but going straight for Shadows, that's like amping up the challenge level right there. And they went for it. So I can't wait to see how it turns out.
I mean, it is only a 30 FPS YouTube video, but I've been diligently tapping away on a frame-by-frame basis, and I haven't seen any repeat frames. So it does look as though performance, based on the very, very limited sample we have, certainly looks initially promising, I'd say. So, yeah, interested to see what the final game looks like. I think from a presentational perspective, there's a lot of shots here showing the ground, and the ground textures don't particularly appeal. But beyond that, I think there's a lot to get excited about here. So, looking forward to seeing the final game. I believe it's out in December the 2nd, the trailer says.
I'm sure we'll cover that, but I want to be covering Metroid Prime 4 at the time, so hopefully.
Yeah.